I never expected to come across such a sight. It was just another afternoon after school, and I thought I would have the house to myself. But what I saw through my stepmother's slightly open door left me speechless. Startled by an unexpected event, my entire world changed suddenly. The following incidents changed everything between us. There lies an irreversible moment as I recall the events that unfolded into an unforgettable night. I want to express that all happenings were consensual. It may seem unbelievable, but it is the absolute truth. Upon coming back home from school that day, I felt drained from hours of classes, and the house was eerily quiet. Upon entering, the only noise was the soft hum of the refrigerator while golden beams of late afternoon sunlight lit up the hardwood floor, creating a peaceful and calm atmosphere. I was sure I was alone. I tossed my heavy backpack onto the sofa, planning to grab a snack and unwind briefly before others returned home. But as I neared the kitchen, something stopped me suddenly. The noise was faint yet clear. I paused, unsure of what I was hearing. It was soft, like a hushed murmur or whisper, yet it had a distinct and intimate quality that sent a tingling sensation of discomfort across my skin. I listened more closely, trying to pinpoint the source. I found the sound almost inaudible, yet captivating. Quietly and with great care, I moved down the hallway, my steps silent on the floor as I approached the origin of the sound. Upon reaching Betty's room, I noticed that her door was slightly ajar, allowing me to see the edge of the bed and a bit of the room beyond. I knew I shouldn't look. Every instinct told me to turn and leave, yet an irresistible curiosity drew me toward that door. Before I could stop myself, I peeked through the opening at that moment. I saw her, my stepmother Ginger, lying on the bed, her back slightly arched, eyes closed in a state of pure bliss. For a long time, I was frozen in astonishment. I stood there breathless, my throat tight as I watched her, my mind racing to understand what I was seeing. She was pleasuring herself, her fingers moving gently and rhythmically as soft sighs escaped her lips. The sight sent a deep shock through me as I encountered the unknown. My heart raced, pounding fiercely in my chest as a wave of warmth washed over me. I knew I should leave, retreat quietly, and pretend I hadn't seen anything. Yet I remained frozen. I was paralyzed, my gaze fixed on her. Each subtle movement she made evoked a deep response within me. Ginger was stunning, incredibly beautiful at that moment, her body displaying an easy, natural grace. Just as I was about to force myself to look away, she opened her eyes. I felt a moment of fear, convinced I had been caught. But instead of reacting with surprise or anger, she simply looked at me. The gaze was kind and inviting, without surprise or shame, accompanied by a slow, smoldering look that made my skin shiver and my breath catch. As she spoke in a soft voice, she warmly invited me in, and for a second, I thought I might have imagined it. But as I stood still, she offered the same enticing smile and repeated the invitation more insistently. My legs seemed to move on their own, slowly carrying me into the room. My heart beat faster with each step. A strange mix of anxiety and excitement filled me as I stood by the bed, looking down at it. I felt the tension between us, thick and palpable in the air. Betty, at first, she remained silent, only watching me with her intense, smoldering gaze that seemed to see into my deepest thoughts. I swallowed hard, trying to speak, but no words came out. My mouth was dry, and my thoughts were jumbled. She seemed unfazed by my silence. She reached out her hand, taking mine, her touch gentle yet firm as she pulled me closer. My heart raced, and a knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. But there was also a feeling of exhilaration and anticipation as I sat down next to her on the edge of the bed. Ginger kept her hold. She guided my hand slowly as my hand traced the gentle curve of her hip. The warmth of her skin seeped into my fingertips, and my breath caught as I felt her hand over mine, leading me with deliberate, intentional movements. I could feel her pulse beneath her skin and the gentle rise and fall of her chest as she breathed. She whispered to me, her voice barely audible, yet filled with affection that made my heart ache. She told me not to be nervous. I hesitated but nodded, unsure if I felt more anxious or thrilled. Her fingers intertwined with mine, guiding and teaching me. We moved in perfect sync, each touch sending a surge of energy through me, and I felt our connection deepening with each moment. It was more than physical. It was something deeper, something profound and real. The moment stretched as the outside world faded, leaving only the two of us in an experience that felt both forbidden and right. As time seemed to slow down, each breath and touch became more intense, persisted interminably as the strain between us intensified to a critical point. Ginger pulled me closer, her body aligned with mine. I felt the ardor of her skin, the warmth of her breath on my neck, and the soft touch of her lips gently on my ear as she whispered again. Her voice soft and breathy, she beseeched me to stay. Her tone infused with a subtle insistence that quickened my pulse. She appeared hesitant for me to go. Couldn't have left even if I wanted to. The obstacle between us was too strong, the bond deep. We were inextricably linked. This instant was crucial. Moved my lips nearer to hers, her breath warmed my skin, and time seemed to halt. The world paused as we hovered on the edge of an inevitable moment. The air between us was filled with anticipation, a focus that sent a shiver down my spine. Just as I thought the moment would consume us, Betty leaned gently forward, her lips brushed lightly against mine, sending a wave of warmth through me. It was initially soft, almost hesitant, as if we were assessing the situation. Her kiss deepened, her lips pressing more firmly against mine while her hand continued to guide me, expressing her wishes. We shared a slow, tender kiss filled with an intense yet gentle passion. In that moment, it seemed as though all we had suppressed was being released with each touch, breath, and heartbeat, merging as we finally yielded to the pressure that had built between us. We remained in that embrace for what felt like an eternity, oblivious to the world outside. I felt Betty's body trembling gently against mine, the soft sound of her breathing filling the space between us. Eventually, she pulled back slightly, her forehead resting against mine, her eyes partially closed as she caught her breath. Noticed the faintest hint of a smile with a sense of satisfaction on her lips that made my heart swell. She asked softly if I was okay, her voice barely audible, yet filled with warmth that provided a sense of security and affection. Nodded, unable to express words. She smiled again, her fingertips brushing softly through my hair as she leaned towards me once more, her lips grazing gently against my cheek before pulling away. The room was completely filled with a lovely, calm peace. The previous tension was replaced by a soft, glowing tranquility. We were quiet for a long time, simply sitting together, our breaths synchronizing and gradually returning to normal. The heat between us softened into a more intimate warmth. Ginger laid her head on my shoulder, and I wrapped my arm around her. We sat holding each other closer, the fading light of the afternoon and the muted sounds of the house surrounding us. Whatever this link was, it was new, fragile, and entirely unexpected. Yet at that moment, nothing else held importance. The only thing that mattered was our being together, sharing an experience that felt extraordinarily special, surpassing our past dreams. And for the moment, that was enough. The calm comfort between us seems to grow with each passing moment. The sunlight filtering through the window was fading, casting a soft amber glow across the room. Yet everything within felt alive and vibrant. The weight of the recent events lingered in the air despite our silence. It felt as if we were both waiting for something, suspended in this unresolved suspense. I noticed Betty's body relax somewhat against mine. However, her increased nearness and her hand resting gently on my thigh indicated that whatever had started between us was far from over. Nevertheless, my heart kept pounding. A strange mix of excitement and nervousness rushed within me. I was keenly conscious of her nearness, the sound of her soft exhalations, the heat of her skin on mine, and the lingering fragrance of her scent filled the air. As she tilted her head slightly, lips brushing the side of my neck, sending tremors down my spine. The touch was slight, yet it sparked an inner blaze that grew into a burning craving. I briefly closed my eyes, letting the sensation wash over me before turning my gaze towards her. Her eyes met mine, revealing a distinct shift in her expression. There was an intensity and darkness there. The prior gentleness remained. Yet behind it, I saw a hunger that mirrored my own. Ginger remained quiet, however. The gentle patterns her fingers traced on my knee conveyed all the information I needed, urging me to lean forward, capturing her lips once more. This time without hesitation or cautious exploration of boundaries. The kiss was deep and passionate, as if the suppressed need we both harbored had finally been released, and her hands ascended my chest. Her fingers entwined in the fabric of my shirt as she pulled me closer. I felt her body responding to mine. The delicate pressure of her contours against me disoriented my senses. This encounter felt forbidden, which only heightened its appeal. Her role as my stepmother, a figure who had always remained distant, forged the connection. The dynamics between us seemed increasingly precarious, and I was unable to restrain my desire for further satisfaction. Betty's hands grasped the back of my neck, pulling me closer as she lay back on the bed against the pillows, guiding me. I surrendered to the attraction between us, overwhelmed by its intensity. I soon found myself hovering, my arms supporting me as I looked down at her, my breath shallow. She gasped softly, her chest rising and falling rapidly, her eyes fixed on me at that moment. The tension between us was palpable, and she extended her fingers upward, softly tracing the contour of my jaw before pulling me down once again. Our lips engaged in another passionate kiss. This time her hands roamed my back and shoulders, drawing me even closer until no space remained between us. The heat radiating from Betty's body was intense. I could feel her heartbeat as ours raced at matching speeds. The rhythm pulsed against my chest. I lowered my hand along her side, feeling the gentle curve of her waist beneath my fingertips. Upon reaching the hem of her shirt, I paused momentarily, uncertain whether I was crossing boundaries. But she did not retreat. Instead, she arched her back gently, her body responding to me in a way that clearly conveyed her desires. My fingers slid beneath the fabric, and as I moved my hand along the warm smoothness of her skin, I heard her gentle gasp, a sound that ignited a renewed surge of heat. Her hands entwined in my hair, drawing me closer as she deepened the kiss. Her lips slightly parted. Her subtle invitation to experience her essence was intoxicating, and I could sense the tension in her body through her movements. Every touch, imbued with a sense of urgency, made it challenging. Beneath me, our thoughts were consumed by each other as every barrier between us crumbled, yielding to the long-simmering longing that left no room for retreat. Burdened by the weight of that knowledge hanging in the air. Yet neither of us seemed concerned. The only thing that mattered was this connection, unequivocal and clear. The attraction that bound us. Betty's hands were everywhere, tracing the contours of my shoulders, arms, and chest as though she was insatiable, and I felt the same. The more I caressed her, the more my desire intensified. The intensity of the experience was almost overwhelming. It felt as though we had restrained ourselves for so long, and now that the floodgates had opened, there was no stopping the torrent that consumed us. As we parted, she quietly moaned against my lips, her fingers gripping my hair tightly as she pressed her body against mine. The sound elicited a renewed wave of desire, leaving me craving more. Craving I was incapable of sating my longing for her, her taste, her scent, the feel of her beneath me. Every fiber of my being was ablaze. I understood that withdrawal was impossible. I briefly pulled back, my eyes seeking hers as if seeking affirmation that she was still present in this experience, still wanting it as fiercely as before. Yet her gaze communicated everything I needed. A guarantee of unwavering certainty. There were no uncertainties, only the persistent yearning that had been driving us further from the start. Wordlessly. As Ginger reached out her hand toward me once more, her fingers curled inward, she tugged at my shirt with a gentle, almost beseeching urgency. And as our lips met again, I found myself completely surrendering to the moment, releasing all doubt and apprehension, and giving in to the ardor that had been building between us since I entered that room. The strain between us was tangible. Each touch and kiss brought us closer to the edge. Her body moved beneath mine, her hands roaming my skin as if insatiable, the sound of her desperate gasps filling the room, fueling my zeal. We were intertwined, fully consumed by the passion that had gripped us. There was no turning back. I felt her fingers slide, her hand gliding down my chest, sending shivers as she pulled me closer. Her body arched beneath mine, almost begging for more attention, which I eagerly provided. Each touch, each kiss, each whispered word submerged us deeper into the moment. Only the two of us existed, wrapped in a reality of our own making. The overwhelming intensity was almost insufferable. The tension between us escalated to a critical point as we teetered on the brink of something profound. Yet we were not ready to let go just yet. We remained poised on the edge, savoring each caress and kiss as the fervor between us intensified to the point of potential explosion. I felt Ginger trembling beneath me, her breath shallow and erratic as she clung to me tightly. Her body pressed against mine in a way that sent me reeling, and I knew she felt it too, the same unbearable tension and urgent need for release. But we were not there yet. We lingered on the precipice, drawing out the moment, allowing the suspense to build to an almost unbearable level. The room was filled with the sounds of our fervent moans, our whispered names, and the subtle intensity of our movements as we yielded to the passion that had been simmering between us for so long. This moment was perfect, this bond between us. And as I held her, our bodies moving in sync, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. We had crossed a line, ventured into something forbidden, something dangerous, but I didn't care at that moment. When we were on the verge of something greater, the only thing that mattered was Ginger's kiss, the feel of her beneath me as we became completely lost in each other. And as we finally let go, surrendering to the overwhelming intensity, I realized that this was just the beginning, regardless of what followed and the potential consequences. I was ready to face them in that moment as we embraced in the fading daylight. I knew that everything had changed, and I wouldn't have it any other way. As the heat of our passion began to fade, Ginger and I lay entwined, our breathing gradually returning to normal. The room was quiet, save for the gentle rustling of sheets as we moved closer to each other. The last rays of sunlight had vanished, bathing us in the soft glow of dusk. I watched her closely, taking in every detail, the flush of her cheeks, the soft shine of her eyes, and the way her hair spread across the pillow. Part of me was still in disbelief about what had just happened. But the warmth of her body against mine was undeniable. "What now?" I murmured, somewhat hesitant to break the comfortable silence. Ginger traced her fingertips along my jawline, accompanied by a soft smile as she gently said, "We'll figure it out." We knew this wouldn't be easy. Numerous challenges and potential repercussions loomed. Yet, as we lay intertwined in each other's hold, those concerns felt distant and trivial. We talked for hours that night, our voices low and intimate in the dark. We shared our fears, hopes, and longings. It was strange how something that should have felt so wrong felt so natural. In the following weeks, we navigated a new routine, approaching it with care. Of course, in the company of others, we maintained our usual stepmother-stepchild facade. But in private moments, furtive glances and hidden touches hinted at our secret liaison. The journey wasn't always smooth. We had moments of guilt and anxiety, questioning if we were making a grave mistake. The first time I heard my father's key in the lock after our encounter, we both nearly jumped. But we learned to be discreet, cherishing our private times without letting them intrude on our public life. About a month after that first occasion, Ginger and I were sitting on the couch watching a movie. My father often worked late, and as the credits rolled, Ginger turned to me, her expression serious. "We need to talk about the future," she said, her voice calm yet resolute. My heart raced. "What do you mean?" I asked, as she took my hand, her thumb tracing circles on my palm, indicating that our connection was beyond the physical realm, at least for her. A sense of comfort enveloped me as I expressed that it wasn't just physical for me either. "I think I'm falling in love with you, Ginger." Her radiant smile lit up her face as she leaned in to kiss me gently. She murmured against my lips that she believed she was also falling in love with me. However, such acknowledgement introduced a new array of obstacles. We both recognized that the revelation of our relationship would inflict distress and bewilderment on those around us. The burden of concealing this secret from my father and mother increasingly affected both of us over time. Our bond deepened, and we developed a nonverbal communication to understand one another's wants and wishes in an unprecedented manner. It was both exhilarating and daunting. There were near misses, such as when my closest friend visited suddenly and almost discovered us in a compromising situation. Or the evening my father returned home early, necessitating a hasty retreat to make it appear we were only engaged in a casual conversation. Each near miss heightened our caution, although it also prompted us to contemplate our ability to sustain this pace over time. The persistent anxiety of vigilance was adversely affecting us, and a particularly narrow escape precipitated our inaugural significant conflict. Emotions ran high, and we both spoke words we didn't intend. I exited abruptly, spending the night driving aimlessly around the town. My thoughts were a tumult of uncertainty and pain. Yet with the dawn, I found myself once more at our threshold. Ginger opened the door before I could even knock, her eyes open wide, rimmed in red after a sleepless night. Wordlessly, we hugged, each conveying sorrow through our tears, admitting that the harsh argument had strengthened us. We understood that our bond was worth protecting, and we started to shield our communications more diligently. We mused about our future and the possible consequences of solidifying our relationship. We knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be shock, potential dismay, and perhaps even rage from our closest friends. When we gathered to strategize and imagine, I felt an unmatched sense of optimism as months went by. Our bond deepened. We became skilled at maintaining a dual life, appearing as dutiful relatives in public while being ardent lovers in private. A situation we both knew couldn't persist forever. As our one-year anniversary approached, a year had passed since that crucial afternoon when I found Ginger. We decided it was time to stop concealing and face the consequences of our actions. We spent weeks planning the disclosure, carefully evaluating every detail. Then, on a quiet Sunday afternoon with shaking hands and quickened heartbeats, we sat with my father to reveal the truth. The subsequent discussion was one of the hardest of my life, filled with tears, loud voices, and moments of deep silence. Yet, as I held Ginger's hand tightly, I knew we were making the right choice. The journey ahead would be tough. We would need to mend relationships and rebuild trust. But as we faced the future together, I was inevitably reminded of the past. One afternoon a year ago, in a single moment, everything had changed. Despite the numerous challenges and pain, I wouldn't change a thing, for that moment had led me to a love beyond all expectations. As I looked at Ginger, seeing the same love reflected in her eyes, I knew that whatever lay ahead, we would face it united.